What's up guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then welcome to a little corner of the internet. Today we're going to be watching a video titled The Most Unusual Region in Each State. This should be interesting, so without further ado, let's see what this video is about.
We all have a perception, an image that comes to mind immediately when we think of a place. Look for example at the US states. For New York, you might imagine the soaring skyscrapers of Manhattan. For California, the sandy beaches and palm trees of the state's south. Think of Kansas and you probably envision open skies and vast prairies and fields. But if you've enjoyed my long-form series into each of the states, the US Explained, you'll know that every place really goes well beyond its stereotypes, and throughout the country there are areas that feel surprising, out of place, different from the rest, or at least the image of the state in the public imagination, whether due to their physical landscape or their culture and history. Some areas, of course, feel more different than others, especially in larger states with a huge amount of geographic diversity. This video will be a little different than how mine normally go. In it, I'll be sharing only my own opinions. This is by no means an objective analysis, but I'll be taking you through each state alphabetically, describing at least what I imagine the stereotypical image of that state to be, and then briefly highlight a place, whether it's an entire region, a city, or even a smaller area like a park, that just feels different from how we picture the rest of the state to be. Again, these are just my own opinions. I've spent time in 38 states.
This looks so cool.
So far, some of the areas I'll feature are places I've been to, others I haven't, so if you have ideas of places you would have included instead, please let me know in the comments. Because I'll be talking about each state, I'm splitting it into 2 episodes. If you enjoy this one, I hope you'll come back to watch part 2. Hello and welcome to That Is Interesting. I'm your host Carter. Today, a part of each state that defies expectations. Alabama is one of the most quintessentially southern states, and most of the imagery that comes to mind when I picture it relates to its southern culture or its historical role in the civil rights movement. It's primarily a rural state, and most of it is inland, so think of rolling hills, forests, and farms, and small towns. It's easy to forget, though, that the state does have a small coastline surrounding Mobile Bay. Just 52 miles of Alabama's Gulf Coast separate the Florida from the Mississippi borders, but this part of the state is home to vacation destinations like Orange Beach and Gulf Shores, the port city of Mobile, and the Mobile-Tensaw Delta, a large stretch of swampland at the edge of Mobile Bay, whose incredible biodiversity helping make Alabama one of the most biodiverse states in the country.
This looks like a rainforest or something.
Has given it the nickname of America's Amazon. It's not beachside condos and high-rises or ecologically rich wetlands that jump to mind when I picture Alabama, so I'm going with Alabama's coast for the Yellowhammer State. Alaska is by far the largest state in America and a place with an incredibly varied geography. I mean, we're talking about a state 2.5 times the size of Texas, and if overlaid on the lower 48 would stretch from Florida to California and northern Minnesota. This is a state of wilderness, but the different corners of the state, some of which are more than 2,000 miles apart from one another, from the fjords of the southeast to the volcanic islands of the Aleutians to the frozen tundra of the North Slope, all still feel very much Alaskan, with their cold weather, isolated locations, and incredible natural scenery. So I'm going with a part of the Alaskan wilderness that does really stand out, and those are the state's vast fields of sand dunes, punctuating Alaska's forests and enormous dune fields like the Great Kobuk, Nogahabara, and Upper Tanana River dunes. Dunes to me...
It's true though, if I think about Alabama, I definitely don't think about a beach. And if I think about Alaska, well, I didn't even know that they have sand dunes.
They are almost synonymous with beaches or deserts, not the Arctic Circle, but these remnants of retreating glaciers are a stunning example of just that. Now, I have a clear image that comes to mind when I think of Arizona, and it's this place right here on the Navajo Nation in the northeastern corner of the state, Monument Valley. Through westerns, this imagery of the Southwest, of Arizona as a land of red rock, towering buttes, stunning canyons, has been drilled into the popular imagination. The state's deserts are truly some of the most beautiful places on the planet, but it's easy to forget that much of the state isn't desert at all. Stretching down the center of Arizona, the Kaibab Plateau and Mogollon Rim are covered in forests. At such high elevations, this area gets a ton of snow in the winter. There are even ski resorts near Flagstaff, and there's a surprising amount of flowing water for a state we so often think of as just only desert. In many areas, red rock remains beneath the trees and just makes for some beautiful scenery. Arkansas was a tough one for me. This is a state split pretty evenly between delta flatlands and the mountains and plateaus of the Ozarks and Washtenaws, and it's a state known for both its rich farmland as well as its wilderness and natural beauty. So I'm going with the northeastern corner of the state, where two pretty unusual geographic features sit right next to each other. There's a long, thin rise in a land called...
Is this the state? How is it? How is it like, oh, I'm changing the volume instead of the video. What are these? Like, are these areas inside the states because the states are massive? Or what are these? Anyways, interesting.
There's a long, thin rise in the land...
Does every state have, like, borders inside of it as well? Wait, what am I? I don't get it.
Crowley's Ridge.
I don't get it.
A former island that once lay between the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, and right to its east, the St. Francis Sunken Lands. The Sunken Lands were, believe it or not, once a rich land of hills and forests as recently as 1811, when the devastating New Madrid earthquake caused the land to drop 50 feet, transforming it into a flooded region of swamps and bayous. California is easily one of the most geographically diverse states in the country. My home state's got everything from beaches to deserts to redwood forests, massive cities, and some of the tallest mountains in the lower 48. So I'm picking a place that doesn't get a lot of attention or tourism, the California Delta. Swamps are maybe the last thing I imagine when I think of California, but the Golden State really does have it all. Between the Bay Area and the Central Valley, the Delta is where the waters of the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers, which drain the snowmelt of the Sierra Nevada and feed the fertile Central Valley, collect before they're channeled through the Carquinez Strait and into the San Francisco Bay. These sloughs, marshes, and distributaries spill and fan out across a section of the state that's often overlooked but plays an essential role in one of the most important water systems on the West Coast. I picture one thing when I think of Colorado: mountains. This is a state famed perhaps more than any other for its skiing and winter sports, its beautiful hikes and incredible mountain vistas. In fact, of the 30 tallest peaks in the lower 48, 24 are in Colorado. This is not only a mountain state, it's arguably the mountain state. That's why you might be shocked to hear that an entire 40% of Colorado is made up of plains. Pancake flat prairies, part of the Great Plains, an area affected badly by the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. This is farmland and rangeland. It's dry and flat. Other than the cities of the Front Range, it's sparsely populated, home to no major towns.
It's really, really cool, though. It looks like straight from a movie. I would love to be there.
This is an area, a huge part of the state, practically.
Look at that. It looks like from the scene from... Oh, man. What is the series? I'm sorry, you guys. Wait. With the... Wait, I'm gonna have to think about it.
Indistinguishable from neighboring Kansas or Nebraska, but it's all part of Colorado. Now, the states of the Northeast are where this can get difficult because many of them are pretty small, and Connecticut is no exception. The tiny state sits squarely in the middle of the Northeast megalopolis, a string of continuous urbanization stretching from Washington, D.C. to Boston that makes up just 2% of the country's land area, but houses an entire 17% of the U.S. population, nearly 1 in 5 Americans. Smaller cities like Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven, as well as suburbs of New York City and Fairfield County, make Connecticut one of the most densely populated places in America. So I'm going with the Litchfield Hills.
Breaking Bad.
In the northwestern corner of the state, these hills and small mountains are geographically part of the Appalachians, and the Appalachian Trail even cuts through this rural corner of the state. It's a land not of cities and suburbs, but of small farmsteads, lakes and rivers, barns, and little villages. Like Connecticut, Delaware is a tiny, densely populated state in the Northeast megalopolis, with most of its population living in the Delaware River city of Wilmington, right along the border with 3 other states. So, like Connecticut, I'm going with the rural part of the state, the inland area of Sussex County, its southernmost and physically largest county, and I'm leaving out the coastal vacation towns like Rehoboth Beach and Bethany Beach. This is a part of the state that's very rural, home to mostly small towns and farmland, including a lot of chicken farms. Now, like some of the larger states, there is so much in Florida that is so different from other parts of the state. The culturally Latin and Caribbean South, the wilderness of the Everglades, the maritime culture of the Keys, the vacation destinations and retirement communities of Central Florida, each are so uniquely distinct, yet at the same time are major tourist destinations and a part of the state home to or close to tens of millions of people, many of whom are descendants of transplants from.
This looks like such a rich neighborhood as well with the little ponds in the middle. I love it. But it looks really, really, really pretty. This is like very odd to me. I don't know if you guys can see.
The north.
Oh, excuse me. Like these houses that are here with the oh, you can't see my mouse.
Or immigrant.
Here. What is this video, guys? I'm so sorry. You're gonna hate me because I'm stopping all the time and talking random stuff. But look at this. It's like a little roundabout and then there's like houses on the roundabout. I don't know. I just find that weird. I bet the gossip in that neighborhood is so good though. Like when you walk out and you see the neighbor from across the street and maybe that's the dream. Maybe that's where I should be. It looks really pretty though. And very kind of clean and, you know, looking good.
It's from Latin America and the Caribbean. So we're going with North Florida, the culturally southern part of the state, which includes the panhandle and parts of the peninsula, and I'll focus in particular on its inland areas like Tallahassee and parts of the peninsula stretching into Gainesville, even as far south as Ocala. This is a more rural area compared to the rest of the state. It's still very much culturally a part of the South and remains a traditionally agricultural part of the Sunshine State. For Georgia, a southern state of farms and small towns, as well as the bustling city of Atlanta, I'm going with the Sea Islands, a stretch of coastline that remains one of the most culturally distinct places in the country. This is the homeland of a people known as the Gullah or Geechee, descendants of enslaved West Africans who, cut off from the mainland, maintained unique cultural traditions, as well as a Creole language influenced by both colonial English and a number of West African languages. Hawaii is famed for its beaches, volcanoes, and rainforests. This major vacation destination is typically billed to tourists as a tropical paradise. The state's Mount Waialeale is often considered to be one of the rainiest places on the planet, a lush jungle on the island of Kauai. That's why it always surprises me that the tiny state is also home to deserts and some very arid regions, often on the same islands that contain rich rainforests. Rain shadows caused by the island chain's enormous volcanic peaks dump rain on the north and eastern sides of the mountains, while the south and western sections of the very same islands can be hit by severe droughts. With this in mind, I'm going with the island of Kaho'olawe. Of the 8 major islands, it's among the more low-lying ones, and happens to sit completely within the rain shadow of Maui, blocked from receiving significant rainfall by the nearby island's taller peaks. Because of this, Kaho'olawe is practically a desert, rarely able to sustain a very large population. But its use for decades as a bombing range by the United States led the government to force out the people who did live there, and the dry island is today the only major Hawaiian island that's completely uninhabited. Idaho, known for its potato farms,
really, really pretty though.
For its mountains, its ranches and remote wilderness, encompasses everything from forests and lakes in the north to snow-capped peaks, agricultural valleys, and a desert in the south. So that leaves me with a place that not only doesn't look like it belongs in Idaho, but it doesn't even seem to belong on planet Earth, and those are the craters of the moon. This lava field on the Snake River Plain was formed from the same volcanic hotspot that today sits beneath the Yellowstone volcano and is so large that, standing atop its volcanic peaks, the cracked black and dark red rock seems to stretch into a lifeless expanse for as far as the eye can see. It really does look like you might be on the moon, and it's a place where you can see tons of different types of lava formations like lava tubes, enormous tunnel-shaped caves that cut into the rock. Illinois brings to mind 2 images that could not be more different: the flat agricultural fields that occupy most of the state, and the bustling skyscraper-studded city of Chicago that makes up one of the largest urban centers on the planet. So I'm going with the
Never have I ever seen this. Is this a park? Weird. That looks really cool.
heavily overlooked southern tip of the state. Sometimes called Little Egypt, this is an area that not only is culturally very much part of the South, but a place where hills and forests stretch in from Missouri and Kentucky. Areas like the Shawnee National Forest and Garden of the Gods are homes of beautiful rock formations and are often called the Illinois Ozarks, an extension of the plateau that dominates much of Missouri and Arkansas's topography. Just to Illinois' east, Indiana similarly has a south that is very different from the northern and central parts of the state. You probably imagine the flat, glaciated fields of corn and soybeans that take up much of the Hoosier state, but around Bloomington and further south, areas like Brown County are covered in beautiful forests, hills, glens, and hollows, more reminiscent of areas across the border in Kentucky, where glaciation similarly did not extend. Just like the last two, Iowa conjures up images of cornfields and small Midwestern farm towns, but like the last two as well, is also home to an area missed by glaciation. In the northeastern corner of the state, a region called the driftless area stretches into Minnesota, a small corner of Illinois, and takes up a lot of Wisconsin. These beautiful valleys, bluffs, and hills along the Mississippi River not only make for some really charming scenery and are a wonderful place to visit, but are maybe a little different from how you'd imagine Iowa to look like as well. The region's Pikes Peak is one of the highest bluffs overlooking the Mississippi. Kansas is famously flat. This is a Great Plains state, and I mean, this is its highest point. But you do get a surprising bit of topography just east of Wichita in what's called the Flint Hills. This range of hills stretches down the width of the state and is really just an absolutely beautiful area. I visited last spring and was completely taken by it. It's also the largest section of preserved tallgrass prairie that still exists in North America, so it's a huge conservation success story as well. If you think of Kansas as flat and boring, the Flint Hills will probably change your mind. Kentucky was a tough one for me. It's home to a number of distinct regions, from its river cities to the bluegrass region and the coal country and mountains of the east, but all of those still feel very Kentucky. So I'm going with a tiny section of the state in its very west. Despite the state sitting hundreds of miles from any ocean, the far western portion of the state beyond the Tennessee River is geographically a part of the coastal plain that stretches inland from the Gulf of Mexico. Low-lying, fertile agricultural areas formed as an alluvial plain of the Mississippi River. It's got a lot in common with the deep south Mississippi Delta, something you might not expect in hilly Kentucky. Louisiana is famed for its French heritage, which has influenced the state's unique cultural groups, such as the Cajuns and Creoles, and their foods, festivals, and traditions. New Orleans was an important port city, and changing colonial hands a number of times became a cultural melting pot of people from around the world. Further west,
This is so pretty. This is again something that you only see in the movies. I actually didn't think that this would be in. Isn't this the street where they do the holiday, or I don't know if it's a holiday or the party where they throw like the beads and everything. But I actually didn't think that that was in America for the longest time.
hands a number of times became a cultural melting pot of people from around the world. Further west, a stretch of southern Louisiana called Acadiana became a refuge for Acadians fleeing the British takeover of their colony in what is now Canada's maritime provinces. Southern Louisiana's physical geography is defined by its bayous and low-lying swamps and deltas that sit at times below sea level. In a state that's so culturally and physically unique, it's the higher-lying, more culturally Anglo north of the state, a place that could almost seem to be part of neighboring Arkansas, that stands out, oddly enough, for not standing out. Sticking with the French theme, we're heading up to Maine, where the St. John Valley along the border with New Brunswick is arguably the most strongly francophone part of the United States. In towns along the St. John River like Madawaska, the most French-speaking town in the country, and Fort Kent, English is a minority language, with 84 and 61% of residents speaking French, respectively. In this New England state known for its maritime heritage with fishing towns,
Wow. That is so cute.
dotting the islands and bays of the coast, the St. John Valley is the main population center this far inland, and an area with an economy centered more around agriculture, home to some of the few farms in the state, with some of the least cropland in the country. Maryland makes me think of the water. From the Chesapeake Bay to the port city of Baltimore to the small fishing villages and beach towns of the eastern shore, and of course the state's famous seafood and obsession with crab, the state is surrounded by water. But a small section of Maryland, a panhandle in the west, stretches deep into the mountains. West of Frederick, Maryland is very much a part of Appalachia. The landscape and culture in this 100-mile stretch of the state far more similar to neighboring western Pennsylvania and West Virginia than to Baltimore or D.C. Cities like Cumberland are very much industrial towns, and these mountain areas, with an economy historically centered around railroads, mining, and manufacturing, sit much closer to Pittsburgh than to Baltimore or Washington. Massachusetts is one of the most urbanized, densely populated, and economically successful places in the country. Boston, one of the country's largest cities, and its world-renowned universities have turned the state into a center of technology, research, science, and finance, with the second highest GDP per capita in the U.S. The state revolves around the major East Coast city, and with the country's third highest population density, Massachusetts is for many synonymous with Boston. Because of this, it's easy to forget just how rural the western part of the state is. It can take hours to get from the city to parts of western Mass, a region home to mountains called the Berkshires, essentially an offshoot of Vermont's Green Mountains. Like Vermont, western Massachusetts is a land of forested peaks, ski resorts, and small New England towns and farms. Further from Boston, the region's closest city is Albany, New York. Manufacturing giant Michigan, dominated by the...
I love the look of this. It makes me want to, like, I don't know, learn how to grill.
The region's closest city is Albany, New York. Manufacturing giant Michigan, dominated by the Motor City of Detroit, is a Rust Belt state whose industrial dominance saw its population surpass 10 million people. The vast majority, though, live in the cities of the South. One of the only states to be geographically severed in two, Michigan's Upper Peninsula, jutting off of Wisconsin, is only connected to its Lower Peninsula by a single bridge. Though taking up nearly a third of the state's land, the physically disconnected Upper Peninsula is home to only 3% of the state's population. Were the UP its own state, it would be the least populous in the nation and the most sparsely populated east of the Mississippi. This remote wilderness is a land of forests, the surprisingly tall Porcupine Mountains, copper and iron mines, its small mining towns settled by immigrants from countries like Finland. Across Lake Superior, Isle Royale, the third largest island
in the Upper Peninsula. We watched a video on that, like when I started this channel 6 months ago.
Lower 48 is one of the few national parks in the eastern half of the country, a wilderness home to moose and wolves, much closer to Minnesota and Canada than to the rest of Michigan. The land of 10,000 lakes, Minnesota is defined by its woodlands, lakes, and wilderness. Northern Minnesota in particular is known as an outdoor enthusiast's paradise. To the south, most of the state is agricultural, while the Twin Cities sit between the southern farmland and northern forest. In the north as well, though, a low ridge called the Mesabi Range, rich with iron deposits, has been transformed into a long string of open-pit mines. This iron range, essential for building the American steel industry, was once home to some of the largest mines on the planet. While German and Scandinavian immigrants settled much of Minnesota, Italian and Eastern European immigrants flocked to the Iron Range, moving to towns perched on the edges of these massive mines. With its deep-rooted industrial economy, unique regional identity, and a landscape so drastically shaped by humans, it's different from any other part of the state. As with neighboring Alabama, Mississippi brings to mind a rural Deep South state, a land of cotton farms and small towns, and some of the highest poverty in the country. White sand beaches are not the first thing I think of. But Mississippi's small Gulf Coast is home to beautiful beaches and sandbar islands, and while much of the state is rural, coastal Mississippi is almost entirely urbanized. A string of beach towns and port cities like Bay St. Louis, Gulfport, Biloxi, and Pascagoula stretch from border to border along nearly all of its coast. Not exactly the Mississippi you might imagine. The last state we'll talk about in this episode is Missouri. An important Midwestern state, it's home to two major cities, St. Louis and Kansas City, two major rivers, the Mississippi and Missouri, and two major regions, a culturally Midwestern, agricultural north, and a culturally southern south, dominated by a beautiful wooded mountain range called the Ozarks. The state...
This is also like another place that looks like a dream. Why am I not so unprofessional today? This? Oh, but I couldn't do anything with the cows, like they would be just pets, you know? Jackson and Jason and Brett. But still, oh, imagine waking up in the morning to a bunch of fluffy cows. Oh, come on, come on.
An
Come
agricultural
on.
north and a culturally southern south dominated by a beautiful wooded mountain range called the Ozarks. The state, though, generally leans toward the Midwest, pulled that way by its two major culturally Midwestern cities. Slavery was never very prevalent in the mountainous Ozarks, and the state remained with the Union in the Civil War. Its southern parts are, if anything, the fringes of the region, upland south like Kentucky and West Virginia. The one exception to this is the bootheel, a small border anomaly jutting south into Arkansas. The Pancake Flat region, part of the Mississippi River's alluvial plain, is like the nearby Mississippi Delta, a cotton-growing region dealing with high poverty. In the early 1800s, the New Madrid earthquake, striking an epicenter in the region, caused much of the bootheel to sink significantly and flood. It is more in common culturally, economically, and geographically with the Deep South than it does with many other parts of its own state. That is it for this video. We'll cover the most different regions of the 25 remaining states in an upcoming video. If you have any suggestions as to what regions to include or any regions you think I should have included in this video, please leave a comment and let me know. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you learned something new. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover the countries, cities, people, and places of the world and beyond. These videos will leave you saying, that is interesting.
Oh, that's so cute. Guys, I think this video was probably super interesting for you. I would love to hear your state in the comments below. Did you know that they had a region like that? Have you been to any of these places? Thank you for joining me for this video. Hope you liked it. Please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Wow. I need to wake up.